Hey, what's up? Can anyone hear me? I think so. Yeah. Welcome to this week's What the Heck. We have Radiator and maybe Egon. We'll see. Egon's just invisible right now. What's up, Benjamin? Man's laughter. Welcome. Man's laughter being data. We have so much stuff to talk about today, partially because of Super Booth and partially because we have Radiator, who's never been on What the Heck before. So let's do super fast intro. Who are you, and I guess which specific announcement are you the most excited about?
All right, so howdy folks, Radiator, located here in Cincinnati, Ohio. Music was my first love. I actually had a 24-track digital studio that I recorded a lot of local artists in a town in Kentucky I used to live in, and got out of music because I don't know. I was never as good a guitar player as anybody else, and really enjoyed being behind the board. But most of the folks I was running with, like, I had a straight day job and they didn't, and so just lost the passion. And so about 4 years ago, I decided to pick up an Ovation circuit and a Behringer Model D. Don't hate me. And well, let's just say that one thing led to another, and that I developed this problem along the way. And the fun thing about moving to electronic music is I don't have to rely on anybody else. Like, I don't need Carl to show up to play bass, or Jimmy to show up to play drums. I don't have to worry about if somebody flakes. It's all me. And so yeah, that's me. And I love this stuff. I absolutely love this stuff. As far as my most excited announcement so far, man, I don't know that there's anything yet that I'm super jonesing for, but I think it's interesting that Eventide released has announced what looks like a sequencer of some kind. Because I know when I think Eventide, I think sequencers.
Yeah, I mean, let's loop back to Eventide in just a second because I do want to talk about their sequencer. Like, it's an oscillator too, but anyway, yeah, it looks awesome. Hex 7, and yeah, very similar story actually. I didn't start with the circuit. I started even a little smaller, but one of these pocket operators actually. We were at like a mountain film festival in Telluride, and in like little mountain towns, especially that one, which is a particularly high-end like ski town, they have like gift shops for like rich people. And in that gift shop was like a bunch of like high-tech designery gadgets and stuff, and that's where I saw a pocket operator the first time. And it was way overpriced, so I didn't buy it there. I definitely did the like, well, let's see how much this is on the internet. Okay, yeah, I'm not going to pay $200 for this. And then I went and picked up a used one, and I was like super stoked, and that escalated into like some iPad apps, into like an SEO2, into a circuit, and other stuff. It snowballed from there, right? Like, it's easy to just keep going until you have a band. But the thing I think I'm the most excited about, let's see, I'm going to check my cheat list so far.
Actually, let me ask you a question before you answer that. Like, do the Pittsburgh modules count as Super Booth modules? Because I mean, they were announced a little bit before. I've already got mine in hand, so like, because if we count those, it would be Filter of Crows.
Yeah, I mean, I'm obviously very flippin' stoked about Filter of Crows. If we're counting them, yes, Filter of Crows. If we're not counting them, maybe like the Chaos like some of the Chaos modules, like the Sophia sounded pretty cool. Chaos being XAOC, I think. But the Filter of Crows is sick. The reason I think it's maybe not a Super Booth module is because they are going to Super Booth, and they are announcing their something lab, Voltage Lab 3 or whatever it's called.
I hope so.
Yeah, I'm just really I'm less excited about the device itself and more excited to see their design language because I'm a nerd. Like, I'm just really curious. They've been teasing it for like, I guess, a couple months now. like that they have a new design language. It uses their new knobs. I don't know what it's going to look like. I don't know if it's going to be this new chaotic design aesthetic that they've been going for lately that I love, or something a little more refined. I don't know. We'll see. So I'm excited about that.
So if you get the chance, Gaz Williams did an interview today, and he had a segment with Richard Nichols of Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
And he talked about the yes, he brought something. Although I will tell you from what he teased, I didn't feel like it was the VRL, but
Okay.
that doesn't mean anything. I'm nobody, right? But he talked about like that getting to design his own knobs is one of the most exciting things he's been able to engineer in a long time. But you know, you talk about the design language. They specifically talked about that because Gaz was complimenting him on the Beast of East or East Beast.
East,
as far as it
East
actually,
from the East, yeah.
yeah, like actually bringing color to Eurorack, like you have an option other than black and silver. And he talked about that. He's realized that at this point, as far as the design language goes, it should just be fun. And so, to your point, it will be interesting. You know, as far as the device itself, I think all of these Safari modules that we've been seeing over the last 2 years are kind of the building blocks that are like they were his proof of concepts, I think, going into this. So, I just that's actually kind of exciting itself. And another reason why I almost didn't get Filter of Crows because I'm like, that's probably going to wind up in the next version of the Voltage Research Lab, which is something that I'm very interested in.
Yeah. I mean, that was a consideration with all of them, right? Like, is this going to be in something that I'm going to buy later on?
Yeah.
Filter of Crows, I felt like was a solid experiment that I have no idea if they'll include it or not, but at least I think the core of it will be in there. And the same goes for their drum machine that they're working on. Like the Llama and the Polar Bear snare are going to some drum machine they're working on, which will be really cool. Maybe that's what they brought. I don't know, but yeah, I'm just excited to see them using color. Like I think the thing that made me because of mind-blowing moment was the local florist. Like the first time I saw that, I was like, hey, that's really cool. I wish everybody would do that. Like, who cares about everything being the same color and the same design? Like have some fun with modules here and there. Yeah, so Pittsburgh like they went like in a matter of weeks when they started doing the zoo stuff. They went from like barely on my radar to like one of my favorite companies just because they started getting weird.
Yeah, it's funny that was a thing. Because I don't know, like I thought their stuff bread and butter, like the what is it, the their big module that's kind of like a single voice, the SB1 or something like that. I always
Life
liked,
forms,
yeah, like I always liked that. I liked the 3900 that was out. Like I thought that was pretty cool. And when they changed from like the industrial, like the old Dymo squeeze label maker design language for all the labels to the dark design, like at that point I started looking at their was it the double helix and their primary oscillator. Never pulled the trigger because I always figured that like if I want the Pittsburgh flavor, I'll buy a box. But
right.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, they're to me on the radar in a big way, and plus the work they've done with Create Audio. They've done some awesome and accessible things, you know, with their oscillator and their filter. And the East Beast is Create Audio, so
I mean, they're doing all the things right. Like they're collaborating with Create Audio heavily right now. They're collaborating with the audience too. Like they're getting a lot of feedback from people. Like releasing Filter of Crows and like the drum modules. Like they get immediate feedback before they put it into like a flagship model.
Yep.
They're awesome.
Yeah.
Good job, Pittsburgh.
So I'll ask you a super booth question if you don't mind.
Shoot.
So ignoring like what we've seen announced now, which like let's estimate maybe what we've seen to date is going to be 20% at best of what we're going to hear about over the next 4 days.
Yeah.
What company are you most excited to hear announce something?
Oh, geez. If you'd asked me yesterday, I would have said Bastel, but I already know what it is now. Jeez, this is a tough question. I don't know. I guess I don't really know enough about who's going. The company that I'm the most looking forward to something being released, even though I don't even think they're at Super Booth or they don't have a booth, is Korg. Like, I am the most looking forward to Korg machines. Like Roland just released a bunch of stuff that like they're not knockoffs of Korg Volcas, but they are
But
certainly
they
inspired. They
are.
saw,
Yeah.
okay, they work. We can do that with ours. Let's do that. And I think that's great. But Korg's got some stuff in the works that had me hyped a couple of years ago, like the drum
The
log.
drum
Like, are
log.
you
Yep.
kidding me?
Yep.
Instant buy for me.
I'm reserving cautious optimism though, because here's what I want. I played with Volcas like everybody else. The only one I kept is the Volca drum. I want the Volca drum, but big. And from the engineering samples that we saw as they were
Yeah.
teased last year or whatever, I'm afraid that we're going to get a little bit more sampley and not actually take advantage of some of that unique drum synthesis, because I know it's a small box, it's very low power, but man, that thing can kick.
Yeah, I
If you
guess
set up,
I feel like we got the privilege of kind of it was like a teaser, just the tip of the iceberg. And so we've got the Mini Log XD behind me, right?
yep,
Like, I think it's going to be in a similar family where you have a solid analog set of drums and then some digital. Like this one has like a bunch of digital stuff you
yep.
can add on and load up. And I'm hoping they go that direction. This is all speculation from what I saw. And if they go like that, because like you said, analog drums, like some of those drums that they had, like they shake
Yeah.
in a way that like samples don't always get there with. I think that would be a perfect machine. And they have like really nice sequencers. Some thought like yeah. Anyway, I'm really excited about it. Data, you got the J6. I'm excited to see what you do when you finally get that thing at your door. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, so Korg is the company I'm looking the most forward to, and it's just for that one instrument. Like I like a lot of the stuff they come out with, but there are certain things that like appeal to me. Like, yeah, who else? I was actually kind of hyped about the Aurora as well, but that wasn't exactly super new. It was just kind of surprising that it's finally like
Yeah,
coming
it's
out.
gonna happen.
Yeah. The back panel design is beautiful too.
Yep.
Like, who takes the time to do like see-through PCBs on the back for the LEDs? It's cool.
Well, and what's funny about that is you look at manufacturers who put a lot of effort into behind the panel. Like I think the nicest back panel that I have is on the System 80, the 861 or 862 Micro Jove. Like they actually enclose it in kind of like a hammer texture metal box, so that the only thing that's exposed is the power connector. And I was like, oh, it's really nice. Actually, similar to the natural gate, like that's all enclosed. And it's like, hey, that looks classy.
That's cool. I I'm lucky enough that a lot of these Cosmo modules have really cool artwork on the back of the PCBs, not just Look Mums, but like all these other folks that have done them, like everything from like entire Mario levels to like asteroids to all sorts of cool stuff. It makes me want to put like clear backing, and I guess there wouldn't need to be lighting because there's the bus board lighting, but like clear backing, but there's just not enough space in here to walk behind them. So yeah, the Volca sample, that I mean that's an oldie but a goodie. I quite enjoyed that. That was another gateway to I think the drum brute. Once I got the drum brute, that was game over for the sample.
So the manufacturer that I am most looking forward to is I am a huge fan of Clavis. Clavis makes several like different utility modules, and the two things I think they're most known for are the Quadigy, which is a digital quad envelope generator that has a lot of CB and performance control in it. But actually one of my favorite modules, which are I've got two of them right here, are their Clavis the Twin Waves oscillators.
Mm-hmm.
As far as the variety that you get, especially in the Mark II, where they added the self-modulation and like some of the waves in there, like truly some thumping stuff, and it's so affordable, and 8 HP, and it's not annoying. Like, you know, it's a little menu-y sort of, but it's not like trying to remember every preset you've loaded to the FX aid over here. Like I really like their stuff. I like their approach, their design language, and they come up with unique twists on like on all of the mix switch as far as both. It could be a mixer, an attenuator, or a CV controlled switch.
Oh, that's cool.
Um, they announced a couple of new modules last year, but haven't heard a word about them since like a new Logic module, which is simpler than their existing Logic XT. A couple other smaller utilities, but I just I look forward to see what else that they might innovate with. And I, like you said, I don't even know if they're at Super Booth, but they're one of my favorite manufacturers.
There's definitely manufacturers I'm sort of rooting for. Like WMD's local to me, so I'm like always like, hey, maybe they'll come out with that hi-hat module I'm dreaming about, because it sort of feels like the one gap in their drum lineup. I don't know. But I don't know, maybe they'll have something cool. Make Noise, I'm a huge fan of. Like, I don't have many of their modules, but when I go Make Noise, I'm going to go, like, probably like for a shared system if I can afford it at the time. Because when I'm performing, when I'm playing, I like to do a lot of predictable, boring synths. Like, I just like playing that way. It's fun for me. When I'm doing more of the meditative thing, that's where the soft pop too, and the soft pop and like the weirder instruments that, like, you know, I'm guessing a lot of the time. And I think Make Noise really excels at creating a system where I can like sort of guess and make all sorts of beautiful, I don't know, atmosphere with. So that's another company I'm really looking forward to seeing if they do anything. I have no idea if they're there. I mean, I only know what people post, and like that's fine with me. Let's loop back to that weird
Yeah,
sequencer.
the
Yeah,
Eventide.
the Eventide.
The
Yeah,
Misha, is it the Misha?
I don't even remember the name. It's a sequencer. It has rainbow buttons in the photo, and like a screen with like some sort of circle. I don't know. I know very little about it. I'm just guessing. But the fact that it has, it's got 3 output modes, right? Like it can output MIDI if you want to sequence with it. It can output its own voice, or it can output CV for a voice. Like that's kind of crazy. I think multiple voices even. I think 2. What a weird module to enter modular with. Like it's we've seen other like guitar pedal companies, like I think Earthquaker has made a couple.
Yep.
Make modules, but they're not making like a lot of money off of these modules because they're selling like 1,000 of them versus like the 10,000 pedals they have out of that same or a similar circuit. So like it's a weird one. Like it's like a very, I don't know, it's cool. It's probably a fun like project from somebody, like a passion project that somebody brought to the leadership or whoever and made it happen. So
yeah, like, and so I know they had one other module, which was the Eventide Euro DDL delay.
Okay.
Which was supposed to be like a Eurorack version of their DDL delay box from the 70s or 80s or whatever.
Yeah.
In the grand scheme of things, like, and granted, I came to modular late. Like I've only been in the modular side of things, I don't know, 2.5, 3 years. So by that time, like you had that was like an expensive delay, and then you had the Strymon. Why can't I think of the name?
Magneto.
Thank you. You had the Magneto, and like the Magneto had special sauce behind it, right? Whereas the DDL just kind of seemed very plain Jane. And it's interesting to me, to your point. Like at one point they were on sale for $100 off, and when you see somebody cut the price of something by a third, like that's kind of an indicator that maybe it's not performing so well. To see them take another run at this, cool. I'm actually, the thing that I want Eventide to do, and I doubt we'll ever see it, is I want to see a box called the H900, which being a stereo version of the H9000 rack effects unit. That's what I want.
That'd be cool. I mean, one would hope they have some libraries to make that happen, right?
Well, I
Like
mean,
it's just a
that's the
matter of
point.
yeah.
Like actually and granted, this is a company, and in case you don't know, the H9000 is this it's a 2U $7,000 rack unit. If you want the control panel on the front, if you are okay with it just being software controlled, that'll save you $2,000. I'm sorry, while it's a nice display and I'm sure the encoder feels great, that's not $2,000 worth of manufacturing. And but that aside, the way those things work is they have separate ARM cards inside of them. So, and what I was told by somebody who I know who knew people there was that the idea is that in the future, if they need more processing power, you don't have to get rid of the whole chassis. They'll just sell you new ARM processors
Right.
for the next generation. So, like the technology is already modular.
Yeah.
So, and granted, I know nobody makes rack stuff anymore, and this is particularly hot on my list because I've been on a tear buying up 80s and 90s like delay and reverb processors. Because if you think about it, a Roland SRV 2000 reverb is $200. That's less than most modules, but you got to have the space for it.
It's true. It's true. There's a lot of that. As I acquire certain equipment, I'm like, this is why did I hesitate on this for so long? This is like 1/3 of one module. Like, let's buy it and
Yeah.
eat some ramen. Yeah, I don't. I will probably make a 19-inch rack onto one of these IKEA shelves. Ooh, I always drew my mic. At some point, which is why I got them, they're like the heaviest duty shelf at IKEA you can buy, I think. Yeah, I don't know what I'm going to start looking for next. I've already got some stuff I'm about to pick up. This, I think on Friday, I'm going to go pick up this TRS 80 that somebody is letting me pick up. It's an old computer. We'll see what I can do with that thing.
I turned one of those into an aquarium when I was in college.
I think that we'll see if it even fires up. Like, this person hasn't even tried because they're afraid of it for some reason. So I've not seen it. We'll see. We'll see how that goes.
I think people aren't used to computers clicking anymore when you turn them on.
I don't even know. I'm not worried about it. I mean, I'll have a surge protector and I'll plug it in and stand back if I need to, but I think it'll be fine. Probably worst case scenario, like a capacitor is old and smokes, and that's about it.
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't know. Like, I've been on module binge lately. I got that video synthesizer from Critter and Guitar because they re-released them.
Mm-hmm.
The black and white one is for me, and I like it, and that's what you saw earlier. Yeah, I don't know. What are we talking about? Old equipment. Yeah, there's for whatever reason, I think between the 80s and the like 2010s, there's a whole lot of rack mount gear, or even synths that are in that certain neglected pile of like, no one is after those right now. Those are perfect synths to go after. There's a lot of good stuff in that time period.
You know, I'll tell you about the rack stuff. Ignoring the like totally obscure, like, you know, Art made a digital reverb in 1991. Nobody cares about it.
Yeah.
But like I've been watching this stuff, and so I'm not a patient person. It's my biggest flaw as a human being. And so, like, when I'm wanting it, and I decided, hey, I want this generation of Roland stuff. So it was a Roland SDE 3000 with delay and an SRV 2000, which was, you know, kind of one of their first big digital reverbs. They're both from like 84, 85. Then they had the SRV 330 reverb and the SDE 330 delay, which are their late 80s, early 90s versions.
Yeah.
But they're starting to sell for money. And like, I've just had to be patient. And I was like, I feel like karma's coming back to me because I was never good at sniping on eBay auctions or anything. But I mean, I've gotten a couple of pretty good deals on these that way by just being patient and constantly looking. And so you can't see it here, and I'm not going to turn the camera. I've got a rack of all the Behringer mono synths to my right. And that's getting moved into a closet behind me with my rack of polysynths. No, it's actually fine. Like, the racks will go against the wings, so there's still room to get in between the two. This is going to turn into an effects rack and, you know, a couple patch bays. I had shared a picture before of I have mounted the 3 auto boxes onto a rack mount that's meant for Visa. Like, it's a Visa mount, but you can tilt the back plate, and it just so happens that the 3 auto boxes fit perfectly. So I'm going to build a couple more of those for some other pedals I've got. and just have a rack of effects and all be managed through a patch bay. So that's my big summer project. And at that point, I keep telling my wife every time I do a major thing in here, I'm like, that's it. I can't squeeze out any more space. Like it is literally as dense as it possibly can be. But then I keep finding like little tricks, little hacks.
There's so many.
Creative.
Like you saw my previous setup in the
Yeah.
washing room, and just due to the nature of the room, what you saw was everywhere I could possibly put stuff.
Yep.
So obviously it went up. When I ran out of, I was like, well, if I don't have my laptop on this table, I can just like have more room for instance. So, get a VESA like laptop arm stand that can hold a laptop, and then there's also a lot of other things. Like I don't think anyone, I think everybody has room for an Electron box if you can afford it, because they all have the VESA mounts on the back. So you could just have like electrons floating in the air around you.
But let's talk about that, because you're right, you can. But so as somebody who's a freak about rack mount stuff, I was lucky that there was this company called Fracture Industries that started making really nice desktop stands and then rack mounts for Electron gear.
Yeah.
So I've got a unit that's, I think, 5U that is it'll hold 2 of the Electron, like a Digitact and a Digitone, or a Heat, or now a Syntec. And I mounted him in the rack because I'm like, oh, density. But the work, like, to me, you really only get the benefit of those boxes on a table. Like, I can't imagine what it would be like trying to work on them with them floating in the air, unless you were standing and they were like, to me, those really work best flat. Personal preference, right? People make things work. But the funny
I
thing
will
is,
agree with you though. Like I don't have those boxes, but I have used plenty of sequencers and things, and there are some things that don't translate to vertical unless they're in the exact right spot.
Yep.
And fairly solid. So like Eurorack's new to me. Like I have had a 64 HP adapter in Cosmo for a while, but like that was more necessity. Is like getting to play in Eurorack land is new, so I got a sequencer and stuff. Let me tell you, if it's even like 6 inches too low, it's unusable.
Well, and so this case right here, this is all control and modulation. So I've got 2 vector sequencers in there, and then the other 2 rows in there are all, envelope generators, LFOs, a bunch of logic and gate generators.
Yep.
Because that's the kind of stuff that you're going to be messing with. Yep. And for me, like, I just realized having it flat was important. So when I built this desk, I put a cutout in here to be able to sink a case in. And then everything up here, there's no modulation, no utilities, nothing up in the cases. This is all voices, filters, and percussion. Actually, I take that back. I have a case with a bunch of AGH stuff. It has like their envelope generator, but AJH, the mini Moog stuff.
Yes. Yep.
But that felt right to keep those together, because it's a Model D voice. So,
yep.
But other than that, like anything that I would control to change sound is down here.
That's interesting. I'm very used to standing due to Cosmo outside of the hot box or the pyramid. All of the sound controls were vertical, and like even the sequencer up there is vertical, but the sequencer up there, that Evil Eye sequencer, is not like a complicated sequencer. There's like a few switches I can flip to reverse directions and stuff like that, but like it's not hard, versus like the Metron, highly dense sequencer with all sorts of controls, and like some of the key buttons, if I'm like standing and it's below at a certain angle, the knobs actually cover all the labels on the buttons. You can't even see them because they're not like super bright by comparison. Like those kind of things make it not playable unless it's like exactly the right height or horizontal so you can see down and do the thing. Anyway, I'm getting weird. MS-10's going away on Friday to a doctor to get fixed. I'm excited about
Is that local or somewhere in the country?
Local. I'm not going to ship it anywhere. I'm taking it down to a place in the Front Range, and that person is going to make me happy. Hopefully. I could get it back, and he's like, oh, the filter was too noisy, so I optimized it to be super smooth. I would be like, why? Why are you hurting me? Why did you do that? I guess I should take my filter of Crow's magnet off. It's not an aluminum chassis, by the way. It's magnetic.
It's steel. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, back
Anyway,
then when that thing was made, aluminum was pretty expensive.
yeah. So, anyway, I'm excited about that. It's been a little bit unreliable, and I absolutely love the sound of the MS-10. I've been looking for MS-10 filter for a long time, and I even did like some searches for it, but because I'm not familiar with Eurorack, I just didn't have like a good lead. I think I asked a couple of times and nobody really said anything. And then I was watching Drift Diffusion or somebody, one of the Colorado Modular folks was playing at Freak Boutique and had mentioned in his setup he was using an MS-10 filter, the MA35, and I immediately went back a few seconds so I could hear the name clearly, looked it up, and I was like, holy shit. Please be the solution to all of my problems, because what I want is an MS-10 filter that I'm not afraid to kick around. Like this thing I took to a performance, and like the night before the performance, its LFO stopped for some reason randomly, and I was like, oh no. It thankfully randomly started working again for the performance, but it's been a little flaky. So I was like, okay, well, let's figure out something else. So that module came in, and again, a great example of a filter where when I watched a bunch of demos, kind of sounds like it. The second, there was one demo that kind of got closer. I was like, okay, that's probably right. Second I got it, crank the resonance, do a big filter sweep on mid to low bass, and I was like, okay, I'm happy. This is going to work. This is going to do the thing.
So I remember watching you building your cases, because I remember when you were messing around with the power strips, or the power bus in the back.
Yeah.
How long have you been in Eurorack now?
Eurorack itself?
Yeah.
I built the case itself last year, middle of the year, and then futzed around not doing anything with the power supply. Bartok was like, try Trogatronic, because I was afraid to do the RT65B stuff. So I splurged and bought Trogatronic DIY one, the 10 amp one, because I'm tired of, I guess it's 20 amp total. I'm tired of messing around. I don't want to care about, I don't want my oscillators detuning. I don't want to care about how much power requirements. I didn't even notice until a couple days ago that Air Instruments Loopman is 500 milliamps or something. It's a thirsty. I don't care now. Yeah. But I didn't start actually getting modules until maybe late last year or early this year.
Okay. Well, because the reason I'm asking is, one of the things that actually I've really enjoyed about this community is it's, everything's expensive, but if you get into something, especially if you're buying used, you're not usually going to take that big of a bath on it for the most part. So in other words, you buy a popular filter, it's not for you. You're more or less going to get your money out of it, sending it to a new home. And so I've had my share of things come through that were utter disappointments. I was going to ask you, have you bought anything that you were super hyped for, and then you get it here and you're just like, what did I do? What is it? What even is this?
Yeah. I mean, I will not say that it wasn't a big hit. I do think it is a big investment to fill up. It's not a small case.
No.
And it will be full eventually. But to your point, and actually CK is the one that sort of convinced me. I was eyeing the llama and the polar bear snare. He's like, dude, they're limited edition, and a lot of these modules hold their value unless it's a utility or something. And I was like, that's a really good point. I don't want to scalp anybody, but I have less fear of getting something like a llama or a crow or the Pittsburgh module, or something that's more of a standard. Because I can always sell it, and maybe I'll take a $20 to $50 hit, but at the end of the day, that's not too much in the grand scheme, especially over time. Things I've been sort of disappointed by, actually, one of them is over here. The OTA MS-20 VCF. Mm-hmm. I built a lot of VCFs, specifically MS-20 ones. That's pretty much exclusively what these filters are, and a few other things. And so when I got it, I had certain expectations. I essentially wanted one of those to, particularly for the high pass filter, so I could deprecate the need for like the voice transformer I was sort of using for like a megaphone effect on my voice. So this is an easy way to do that. A little bit of resonance, high pass filter, megaphone, done. And it works for that. But when I went to try the actual like low pass filter, which is a really nice filter typically, something about that one, the resonance is a little bit weird. And I don't know if it's because when I first plugged it in, it lit on fire.
That's problematic.
Yeah, and I think the seller actually did the DIY kit and sold it to me without checking it. Like they probably did like a few of them at a time. Now I look a little closer at the modules, but like I'm paranoid. So like when I plugged it in, I had it like in my hand with the caps pointed away from me, and my glasses on, and like I saw the resistor glow, and I was like, all right, well, shit's wrong. I didn't plug it in the wrong way. And I took a closer look, and there was like typically when you DIY stuff, there's all these legs left over, especially on the through-hole components. And when you push them through to solder them, sometimes they bend inward and touch. They were shorting all over, all over the board.
So like he didn't trim them, or?
Yeah, he hadn't trimmed the legs.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm not gonna like throw them under the bus because like mistakes happen, and I owned all of the ICs and parts for it, so I just swapped a bunch of stuff out real quick. And got it working again, but something about it is just not quite making me happy. So that probably won't be the case for long, especially once that lunar whatever the
communicator,
that's going to go and replace that.
It's funny because that's, if you're even slightly OCD, you talk about that when it's a DIY module. You had high expectations. Something was wrong, but now it's almost like, can you really trust that module? Like. Because something else could be the thing that's actually making it not sound the way that you think it should.
Well, what's going to happen is I'm going to pull it. I'm going to probably take another closer look at it and send it to somebody I like for free. So if you want an MS-20 filter, hit me up. Let's figure something out. Trying to think if there's anything else I was disappointed in. There was stuff I thought I would be disappointed in, like the llama. I was sort of underwhelmed again with the demos. But actually the polar bear I'm less excited about at this point. I like the llama. It's staying. The After Later Audio Peaks, which is just a Mutable Instruments Peaks clone. Doesn't sit well with me for whatever reason. Like it's just not quite there. I'm very picky about envelopes, I guess, and this one, like, it's adequate, so that one probably won't be the case for much longer. Sell that. I don't care about the alternate firmwares, because, like, really cool, but if I have to, like, look something up or memorize something to use it, like, it's probably not going to stick around too long. Which is fine. Like, if you have a really small case and you're trying to maximize space, that's a perfect module for it because you can do all sorts of cool stuff, envelopes, looping, drums and drum envelopes and all sorts of cool stuff. But for me, that's not really what I'm into. So that's about it. And they're not like disappointing in that they're bad. They're just different than what I expected.
Yeah, they're just not for you.
Oh, and 100 Grit. That's on. Bartok and I just did a module swap. We're letting each other. It comes tomorrow.
Nice.
And I will definitely be trying that out.
That's that box. I in case you haven't noticed, I have a backlog of modules that.
Well, I've seen you like rapidly acquiring modules, and I was wondering about that.
It's like between house projects and family obligations. That's actually the crappy. So I'm gonna just flat out admit this. Everything that I'm surrounded by right now is my midlife crisis. It's recapturing like that thing that I was super into in the 20s that I walked away from like a jilted lover, and stayed away from for a long time. And I was actually telling my wife this weekend that I remember I had a problem with guitars in high school. But the thing is, like, I had a really good job. Like I helped like my best friend's dad build a dial-up ISP in his basement. So like I was making good money at 18. And I was buying all these guitars, and my mom actually said to me once, she goes, I some days actually wish you had a drug problem because it would have been cheaper. And so recognizing that I apparently have an addictive personality, like I always stayed away from vinyl because I was afraid this would happen, and then well, this, and right now the scarcity is real, like that fear of missing out is real, and like that having gone through a few, I put it off or I forgot to go buy it, and then it was a year later to get something that I really wanted. Like it's like almost like I'm very fortunate that life has put me in a position where it's like if I see it, I can get it. And like for instance, the stack of mutable modules. One of these is actually a clouds and the other one's braids, and they're both in completely mint condition. Like I also know if they're not for me, they're going to find a good home elsewhere. And in this conversation,
braids me. If you don't like braids,
yeah,
hit me up. I will buy it.
I have a feeling I'm going to like it pretty well, but I will duly noted. The funny thing is, you made that comment about not price gouging and scalping, but I was talking to somebody else today that there was a guy on Modwiggler who was selling a reissue Moog Model D, and at that time they were 3,000 or 3,500 new. He was selling it for 500 more than he paid for it, and this is when on Reverb they're selling for $6,000 to $8,000.
Yeah,
and his entire point was like he was interviewing people to make sure that it was going to go to somebody who actually would appreciate it, not just another collector.
right.
And I realized, because I have some rare modules that I'm getting ready to put up for sale, and I realized that like because this has actually been the best online community I've ever been a part of, like low toxicity, like meeting awesome people like you and like people really passionate about kind of the same stuff has been amazing. It's very open and welcoming, that it's worth to keep some things quote unquote in the family and like let them go in where you're not just you're not just like pricing. So for instance, when I let the Natural Gate go, it's going to go for what I paid for it, not for $800
for sure.
So
and that's how I feel. Like, let me back up to like fear of missing out a little bit. Like this is a really good community where that's a big thing. Like when I first got into it, it was like mom no computer stuff, because it was like, okay, I can limit what I'm spending by forcing myself to make it, right? Mm-hmm. Like I can only build so fast. And that was before, like I just started right when he was releasing the first module PCP, which was the MS-20 filter. So that was the first module I built. You can imagine I was stoked, but also I just built a filter, and what you do is just a filter, right? Like
you ping it.
I didn't know what that was yet, right? Like I was just getting into it. But I kept built, like every month there was a new release. Like Sam was incredible. Like who releases a module every month? And granted, they're not like brand new schematics. He's built these before, and like a lot of these are like open source schematics or whatever. There's publicly available schematics. I don't know if open source is the right word in this particular context. But so I kept up with that. And at the same time, I'm building on these forums, very welcoming forums, before I was on any Discords or anything. And other folks started making some modules, like ordering PCBs here and there. So like a lot of PCB companies have like a minimum order of 5. So they would order 5, probably only need 1 or 2. I'd hit them up and like send them some money, because like they're works of art that I get to make sound with, right? Like so I bought up a lot of that stuff, and I have a lot of really cool weird modules because of that. But it also instilled in me like I want to help other folks out. Like I don't mind lending stuff to people that I think are cool. Like I sent Data the circuit for like, I don't know, several months, and man, good thing this cord is Kevlar. And I was cool with that. It was cool to see Data make stuff with it. And actually Data did a lot of cool like video animation stuff that I was pretty psyched about too. So that was pretty cool. But like if I'm selling a generic module or like the circuit I ended up selling to somebody else, like fine. But like if I'm selling like an extra like the computer module that I made, like that's going to somebody with a good home. Like I know is going to use it. Like Zorch is going to get one of my filters, I think, if he still wants to buy it. Things like that. So like it's a cool community. And then getting into Eurorack, like it's nothing but like nonstop fear of missing out to an extent.
Well, and that's been highlighted or elevated in the last 2 years.
Yes, particularly with limited releases or chip shortages.
Yeah,
in fact,
especially releases that probably would not have been limited if they were released in 2018 or 2019.
And actually, when I find out, like when I was hanging out with these like EMS folks early on, I knew literally nothing about Eurorack other than it was the same like bus boards that I was building for Cosmo, right? Nothing. Didn't know what companies were what. Like Benjamin was like the person I've learned the most from, because I feel like Benjamin knows every single module in existence for some reason, and I'm thankful for that. But I'd hear about it like this year, especially as I'm buying stuff, I hear about a new module like that MA35, and immediately like dread in my gut that, oh no, this person's not going to make these anymore. Or like in this case, they're all silver panel, and I found out like the creator Jason had made like a handful of black panels, but they were all gone or whatever. Then I reached out and I was like, hey, can you do black panel? And like really reasonable rate, new module with the black panel was nothing. And like it was really cool just to see like them make that thing. I don't know. I like this community. It's really cool.
Yeah,
it's like a combination of art and function. Like you get to play with the art, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and the obsessing over the details about gear, like, and just like I'm a gadget guy. I've always been a gadget guy, right? So this scratches that itch, and the ability to sit down and actually really get to know something. And I love when you learn new ways to abuse things that you never would have thought of because somebody else did it by accident, and they're like, hey, this turned out to be cool.
Yeah. And I like Beast from the East. We were just having a conversation this morning. Some folks really hate the design, and some folks really like it. I am in the like it camp because it's weird.
Yeah.
It reminds me of like nature punk rock or something. I don't know, like an old like crappy high school poster, like mascots drawn on it, but it's really cool. I want more weird stuff. So like Local Florist, Beast from the East, like anything Casper Electronics touches, I will buy. Like, I don't know. I think it's cool. Like, they're just nice little pieces of art that you get some sounds out of. Disappointments. My biggest disappointment with Eurorack is that I haven't found an ADSR that I actually really like.
Oh, an actual ADSR?
Yeah. An envelope specifically. Like, my requirements are very specific because, like, Cosmo, I built that. Like, I have a really nice ADSR. And a lot of these ADSRs, for whatever reason, like they're either digital or something, but like I can just flip a switch and like my bass is on, like, and I can leave it on. I can temporarily hit it with the momentary down. Like all of the stages, so attack, decay, sustain, release, are
CV
live. It's not like it has to. So like if I hit it on, you'll see I can adjust the sustain like a volume knob. Instant. Like it's not that complicated. So like the things I'm looking for just don't exist yet, or I haven't found them in Eurorack in a format that I like. I know there's some bigger ones that can do some of this stuff, like stages or whatever, but I don't know. So that's my biggest disappointment so far in Eurorack. Everything else is blowing my expectations away. So
that's
really happy
that's interesting. So you don't want a pingable envelope generator. You want a performable envelope generator.
Indeed. I mean, there are some cool ping, like the Icary is phenomenal for pinging. Yeah. So yeah.
You know, as I listen to you, the first one that comes to mind actually is the IntelliGel. Now, I don't know. I think it has a manual trigger button.
It does, but it's not a switch, right? Like that's the thing.
Oh, okay.
See what I'm saying? Like, it's really performable to be able to set up something. Like in my case, one of the things I do the most on this when I have the Mega Drone tuned to a specific song, instead of sequencing it and worrying about like setting the sequencer to like be a whole held note or something, I can flip the switch and all of a sudden it's a drone, right? Like those kind of performable things. Or if I've got a bass line that's 16th notes, I flip the switch, all of a sudden it's long held notes, right? Which you can use to sort of amp up and then crank, like again, because it's got that long time knob that adjusts every single stage at the same time. Crank up the time, flip the switch down, you don't hear any difference, and then lower the time, and the sustain, and all of a sudden you go back into 16th notes again. Like those kind of things.
That's really cool. Yeah, I mean, because you're in between is find something that's close, and then buy performance modules like navigators or the 16 fader thing, or just switches.
Yeah, and so like I haven't found like the ideal, like the Javelin I am pretty happy with because it is performable in its own right, but I liked it enough to get two, so there's that. But yeah, like I think there's some things that like are just basic differences, like very minor differences that make a huge difference when you're playing them.
Well, you do have an option, and that's I think similar to the After Later audio story. You can just start figuring out how to make what you want.
Yeah, well, I actually don't have to do that because the things I like are in the works already. Like you saw the Look Mom No Computer VCO came out, and I've got two in limbo, and the Postal is probably in customs right now or something. But those will be in Tiny Cosmo over there in the top left. Very excited about those because what it'll mean for me is that if I am in a hurry and I want to like book it down to Freak Boutique and play there, I no longer have to bring multiple boxes. I could bring that and maybe one box and like be pretty solid.
Actually, speaking of your Cosmo modules, so when you were streaming last night, you had this beautiful like piano-ish thing, and you kept saying it was a Look Mom No Computer like oscillator. So actually, can you? Because I know myself and Egon were very much like trying to get that out of you. Is like so describe what's going on there.
Okay, yeah. There's some tricks happening. Okay, let me save this real quick and load up yesterday's track load. Scroll. I've already made a lot of tracks on this thing. Okay. Don't want to be muted. Let's go to specifically just that sequence. We'll have the bass going too.
So it's so weird hearing it in isolation. It sounds completely different.
Why is there no bass happening? Oh, because I changed that. Just a second. So it was just that. It was just the lead voice there. And all that's happening there is technically two Cosmo oscillators, but one of them's about 50% up versus all the way. The lower one. It's going through an MS-20 filter with just a little bit of resonance, because the resonance gives you just a little bit of a peak. Mm-hmm. There's... that's going into the triple splashback, which is the delay you're hearing, which smooths things out just a little bit. But the ADSR is also going to controlling both the filter and the VCA, and that's attenuated a little bit. But there's not a lot to it other than the filter is just down a little bit, which smooths everything out, and you get a really nice piano sound. And I think that what contributes is maybe that octave down oscillator. So typically when I have two oscillators, one is an octave down, unless I'm doing like arpeggios or something where it makes sense for them to either both be the same or just one of them off.
Well, it was an awesome patch, and I mean, just honest feedback. Like I don't hear stuff like that from you very often. That's not bad. So like it was a nice little audio treat, if you will. So yeah, thanks for sharing that.
It was funny because that was not where the patch I thought. I like to make mellower stuff that has some like sass to it. but I didn't start, like usually I'll start mellow, like I'll start it mellow with a lead like that. This one, I literally started with like the gnarliest, like, let's see.
Yeah.
But like even gnarlier, I'd cranked the BIA to like max gnarly. And I was like, oh, this could be a really nice mellow song. Let's do it, you know? So. And I was also playing a little bit with filters and drums, which I hadn't had the freedom to do before because I didn't have a lot of extra filters to do that with. So I piped all of my drums through one of the Erica, like there's the dual filter, I piped it through one of those, the low pass. And I was able to do some like, you saw me do it multiple times where I like at the end of a sequence, I'll crank it almost all the way off and switch to a different drum pattern where you've got like quarter note kicks and slowly amp that up over 8 bars was just really fun for me. So excited about that stuff. Just plugged in the Overseer today, totally forgot about it.
You
that
got
it was
one.
on. Yeah. Yeah.
So the rumors of you being mean to WMD modules were overstated?
It's not that I'm like intentionally after WMD, although I very appreciate it because they're local, right? Like it's kind of cool. Just when I ask about specific things, they keep coming up.
Oh, and I was referring
you want
to
a compressor? Yeah.
Was what Digi was like, don't give it to him because he kicks modules in the knee.
Yeah, and I was like, you know what, like I can spend a little extra to get that one. That's fine. If you got one, give it to Digi, because I'd rather them also have one. Like, it's cool. But if you see a braids out there, that's what I'm looking for right now. Not for a Eurorack. I've got an adapter panel for it for big old Cosmo.
And I assume you want an original and not a full size.
Yeah, for 2 reasons. One, just, I mean, it could probably be a clone that's identical, but I would prefer an original if I'm going to spend some money on it, partly for sentimental reasons. So
yeah, that's why I did it. When I started this journey, my modular journey started with the Behringer Neutron, which was like, and when I remember when I first got it, I'm like, I'm never going to use all those holes on the right. And then, I started experimenting with it. And like, I think actually probably one of the more common vectors into this is you have a Neutron, you get a Mini Brute 2S, and then you buy a Rack Brew case, which actually is funny. Aussie, did you actually bought my last Rack Brew case from me a couple years ago. And, so that's what I started with. And I'm like, oh, well, I've got what was it, like 94 HP left. And so I bought a bunch of the mutable, like micro modules and a maths, because apparently you had to have maths or you weren't really into modular.
Also why I got maths there in a nutshell.
Yeah, peer pressure, right? And like it was a lot of fun and an awesome little setup. But over the years, like to your point, like just realizing that first of all, the micro modules for me, because I was able to get the space, like I'd much rather have the full size. And then I started like buying the actual mutable because they're just nice. And they look really good in a row together. But now we're not going to have options. So like I'm really curious to see what the first clone blades is going to look like. Like it'll be like, will we see a full size clone, or will there be a jack plug? It's going to be, I don't know, what would it be called? Like what?
I think we're going to see exact clones, so full size, maybe a different panel, probably black panel, and bigger. Like that's a trend I've noticed. They go both smaller, which I think probably sell more, and you'll see things get bigger, like sort of exploded. So more of the functions are surfaced. So I think that we're going to see that with most things. Maths can do a lot of things because we can only do one of them at a time. Yeah, that's kind of true. Maths is, I think maths is essential. Like it's nothing I've been particularly excited about, but it is something where I've learned some stuff about what I like. For example, slew or glide or whatever, portamento, right? Like, freaking love that sound. Like, I have it portamentoed on like every patch. Like, I have my bass and stuff going through like glide modules that I built for Cosmo. Even if I'm not using them, like I might want to, because I really like that sound. So
You
Yeah.
know, pro tip for folks who like the common uses of maths, but don't want to spend the HP on it, is my favorite like similar module is the Delta V by Cosmotronic
Yes.
for the
Yes.
envelope generator and also the slew. Um, Actually, talking about missing out, like he did a limited run of silver panels for them, and I hemmed and hawed, and then I sent him a note. And he's like, "Sorry, I'm out of them." And he's like, "I probably won't do another run because the pricing just keeps going up." So if anybody has an extra silver panel for their Delta V they don't want to use, let me know. But yeah, it's actually my most used envelope generator at this point. See, it's funny you talk about ADSR. Like, I don't know why my brain just doesn't wrap around ADSR in the case. But in all fairness, if I look at how my music has progressed, because I was never into like beat based or techno stuff. Like when I got into this, I was like, oh, I thought I would like do poppy stuff, or I'm going to be, an ambient artist because I can hold a VCA open and have two oscillators beat against one another. Uh, but then I found like I actually enjoyed, doing the beat stuff and like, I don't know, like just having these snappy little, like incredibly sharp envelopes, just like that was my jam. But I also realized that from a musical perspective, everything I do sounds like that, which sounds like so many other people. And I realized like that's an area that I need to grow in. Because I do have two ADSRs. I've just like they rarely get patched.
No, no, no. Here, let's talk about this for a second.
Yeah.
The stuff that I've made that I like the most, I went in with the attitude of making it dumb for me. like I don't need to make a masterpiece. If it's 4 notes over 8 bars, cool. Like I don't mind if it sounds the same. Like I'm okay. Like I joke about making generic techno or whatever all the time because that lowers the bar for me to make what I like. Like I can do whatever I feel like at this point. Like if I make something really crappy, fine. If it sounds the same as another song, like I did an audit of all of my stuff. I played an event in March in person for the first time, and so I listened through all my stuff to like see what might be good to play there, and I was like, oh shit, I use the same exact scale in almost the same riff for like 20 tracks. Like, oh well, it's fine, right? Like, no one cares. I enjoy it. People enjoy it. It's fine. So like, I don't think you need to like yeah, if you want to push yourself to play more complex stuff, cool. But like, don't make that stop you from making anything at all, right? Like, I
Oh
think
yeah.
that's the thing I'm afraid of. Like, which is why yeah.
I think I've gotten over that. So just you and I've talked before that one of my New Year's goals was to actually stream a performance. So as a young man, I was a classically trained trumpet player and was actually pretty good and actually had quite a bit of awards and accolades for it in high school. But by the end of high school, and this is all like I did pep band and marching band and concert band, and I played in like different quartets, trios, and quintets around the town I grew up in. But I remember when I got to the end of high school, like I was just done. Like literally, I put my trumpet, like leaving graduation. I went back to the band room, grabbed all the stuff out of my locker, threw it in the back of my car, and like never touched again. In fact, I actually, I've got two young kids, and they're like, "Oh, what's this?" And so I pulled it out and played a trumpet for the first time in 20 years. And I just realized that like playing more structured, like orchestral music and that realizing that the part that I add to it is the expressivity, or I was very blessed with a fairly high range in being able to play, and some of the flourishes I had great, vibrato capability. And I realize now, like when I'm composing on this, where I'm not, look, I'm a rubbish keyboard player. I've got one, right? But it's because you're supposed to. If you do music, you're supposed to have a key. I think there's a Key Step Pro. Yeah, there it is. There's my keyboard. But I'm never, well, I shouldn't say never. I'm not going to develop that. So I rely on like I can program music, but I find that like I'll get a loop going that I really really like, and then the transition, and this is probably one of the most common problems of our ilk, right? Like the transition into something else, and like I think that's one of the really important parts about, and one of the things that EMS does is by being able to watch other people. Like you're getting connections that your brain wasn't inherently making. And you also realize, so like one of the things I've learned from you is actually being more hands-on with knobs. Like again, you're just gonna ride that filter up for 8 or 16 bars, and like that's fine like that. And I actually like, I play your music in the background a lot, like when I'm at work and trying to like focus when I'm writing. And like I just noticed, like you never notice that it really is, yeah, it may be the same loop for 20 minutes, but it doesn't feel like that. And so, back to that point about, you first reach out and said, hey, if you want to stream, I'll help you learn how to do it. Like, as soon as I get all this mess cleaned up, like that's something I want to do. Because also at the end of the day, you got to practice it, right? And you get feedback from people who are listening to it and like, hey, maybe try this next time. And feedback is growth. So
There's like, this is a great community to do that with. Like some of my favorite streams, beyond my early learning ones, were ones where like it'd be like a lazy Saturday morning or something and no one's streaming, and I'm like, hey, I just finished putting all my module, like I rearranged all my modules in my Cosmo. Like, does anybody want to like hang out while I patch from scratch? And I just get to like hang out and talk, and like, it's probably not like the most entertaining, because it's like 2 hours until I have like some semblance of a track going, right? But it's like pretty fun, and like you get a, I don't know, I like the casual feel of it when I'm doing stuff like that. Like
yeah,
I like hanging out and soldering while other people are
yeah.
hanging out. Yeah, shock value. Let's back up a second. Shock value is saying like sometimes I wonder if I do ambient space stuff because I'm not good enough to make something better. I don't think that's true.
No.
I find myself, like in the track I played last night, it's not really ambient, but sort of falls in like a moody category, similar, like adjacent. But when I get into those moodier, like ambient or like mellow stuff, like my mellow set list, it's really hard for me to change anything because it's like getting a hug while wearing a blanket, right? Like you don't really want to get out of bed into the cold. Like it's nice, like it's meditative. So that's why I get stuck in those sometimes. Like I am aware of it, and like sometimes I wish like, okay, I would like to transition this into something different. Very rare do I actually get out of that loop, particularly with mellow stuff.
So
Yeah.
just to address shock value stuff, the funny thing is, one of my favorite performances I've ever seen on here was one of yours. It was a couple months ago, and I felt like it was actually a little bit different than a lot of the stuff you do, and like I loved it. I listened to it like 50 times, and now I can't find it. That's the only thing I hate is like I don't remember what date that was. I like it came up in the autoplay, and I was like, this is really awesome. But I mean, actually, to also give you some props, last night, like sampling what Heck did, like just from an overall like the stream and like the performance, like it was actually really cool to kind of have those echoes leading into your own thing. So I thought that was super clever, and wanted to give you a bravo.
I didn't realize that. I mean, partly because like I was busy like
Yeah, you
ending a stream and stuff. I'm gonna have to rewatch that because that's
yeah,
cool.
it's like, especially seeing the two together, like one pick up into the other, like it was like it was awesome.
Yeah, see, shock value, you got some cool shit going. Don't worry about it. Don't stress it. Yeah, I don't know. It's that's why you see I have like on my playlist I have mellow and not mellow. Like I find anything that's not in the mellow category really hard to do for any amount of time, because it's sort of like the mega drone, and to me like the mega drone being like look mom no computers thing. I don't know if you watched him do the 24-hour stream, but if you listen to it after a while it's like oppressive. Like the heat from the sun is melting you, you're squinting a little bit at the sound, like it just starts getting heavier and heavier. And the same thing when there's like four to the floor happening like that long, like like my ears hurt. Like not physically because I keep my headphones like loud enough to where clicking is loud to me, but like you just get like a little bit tired. So like that's Where like something like Last Night appears is like I'm doing some 4-to-4 thing and playing around, and I'm like, I get tired, so I'm like, okay, well, if I make this sequence 16 bars instead of 4, all of a sudden I have a really mellow lead, and then I get stuck into mellow land real quick. I don't know. You get a break from that. I don't know. And any long performance, like I did the Magpie Fest, it's a year and a half or something ago now. I don't even remember. That's where I really learned how difficult it is to do 20 minutes of high octane set, because you do want to change things up. Like one bar at 80 BPM is a lot longer than one bar at 160 or something, right? Like you can get tired of fast things faster. So it was really hard to do that kind of stuff. I don't know. Still trying to crack that.
One of the things that I really liked about the vector sequencer, and I'm not going to say that it's perfect. Like I did a metric shit ton of research before I decided to invest in something, and waited on that one a long time. But some of the ability to program in some random stuff. So like one of my favorite things to do for a sequence is, I've got a nice snappy, like, I wouldn't necessarily call it a bass line, but it's not like a high frequency lead line.
Yep.
But using one of the modulars built into it, or the modulators, is like a target is octave. And so I can go in and I can say, okay, so the values are going to be 0, 0, up 1 octave, down 1 octave. Tell it that what the probability is going to be and how often to change it. So it just adds a little bit of variety. That it's the same structure, it's the same notes, but sometimes it'll play a couple of them high, sometimes it'll play a couple low, and it's set up with that it more often than not it's going to stay where it's at. And that's part of the reason why, like, getting into some of the random and a lot of the logic modules I did were to use them as triggers to add interesting events. So another one of my favorite things to do is I had a dot, which is the little 3-channel Euclidean sequencer from Nipro Modular.
Yep.
Fantastic little guy, and I would get 2 like sequences running completely set up differently, running them into an and every time they would just randomly hit. And I was also rotating them randomly, and every now and again when it would go high, it would so on the Versio reverb, the Desmodus Versio.
Yep.
One of the inputs is fuck shit up, right? And
Yes.
when you hold it and so like throwing that texture in just randomly, that's completely unpredictable. Like I try to put some of those things in there that musically fit and also are interesting when they happen, to the point that's like people get excited, you're starting to listen for it.
That's part of it. I think a little bit of randomization is good. So right now I'm wrestling with that tape module, the loop band, because it's gigantic. I can see the potential of that space being used for other things. But one of the things I like about it that I hated at first is that it's playing a 6-second tape loop. And every 6 seconds, if I'm playing at like 1-to-1 speed or whatever, the sound sort of fades out and in where the loop is cut. And what I did was I recorded some like radio noise onto it, like static.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm using that as a snare, and I get really cool glitchy effects, because if I'm using it as a snare, every once in a while that snare will, or not snare, using it as a hat, sorry, not a snare. Every once in a while that hat will hit right on that dead spot. So like you're getting some randomization there, plus a little bit of warble in the randomness of it. So like that thing I love. That was going Last Night, and that's where you got like it almost sounded like the data bender was doing some magic to it in places where the data bender was completely off. Like it was pretty cool. So some randomization to add some like that ear candy. That's really nice.
Yes, that's what it is, ear candy.
Really cool. I'm a big fan of performable features. So like that Look Mono computer oscillator, octave switches. Yeah. My favorite. Rotating ones are great. I'm getting used to the teeny tiny ones on a lot of the oscillators in Eurorack, the 3-way ones, and I think 3-way is fine. Typically, I'm only going up or down like an octave. like those are really cool. I love that you're randomized, like not randomizing, but like you're using that to add flavor with your sequencer. Like
Yeah.
that's super cool. I don't probably could rig something like that up with the Hapax, but really what I tend to do more often is like flip the whole sequence up or down an octave and then change the sound a bit. Yeah,
But
I'm excited to try more of the features in this thing, like time stretching and stuff like that. Could be fun.
well, to that point, because like the options for some of this stuff in the mod lanes on the vector, right? It's let's call it algorithmic sequencing, where it's
Yeah.
I generally look at it's like I'm giving you the rules in which I want you to make sounds or to trigger sounds. How much of that do you have with the hotbox?
Uh, all right. So if I'm looking at a sequence, let's go to, let's see, what do I have on this one? Like a drum sequence, sure. So I'm looking at a drum sequence. On every note, if I hold it down, I get a bunch of parameters. You're not going to be able to see it, I'm sorry, but there's a chance parameter. So I can set that for the entire sequence really quickly, or I can set it per note, which is pretty cool. It's exactly what you expect. But more cool than that, I think, is that there's still note lengths. There's still, with even this drum type of sequence, in that I can make the note length like 3. So it's still sending out a trigger, right? But in the hotbox, it's 3 long, which means there's another roll parameter. So I can add a roll to it. So if it's 3 long, I can make roll 16th, 8th, or more fun, like 64th rolls, right? 128, like 256, right? Like it goes pretty high to where you're getting like glitchy stutters all of a sudden. And then in addition to that, there's math. So I can say, I want this to get triggered once every 2, or starting on the first beat, or hit on the second sequence bar, or whatever. Like you can do a lot of combinations of that are really nice. So like in the past, I've had sequencers where I need to like make a 2-bar sequence just so that like one extra snare hits on the second pass. Yep. Whereas this is just like, it's just 116 note sequence with a couple of parameters, done. Really easy to manipulate after that.
You know, you bring that up, and this is one of the things that, right, we learn we have certain proclivities as, you know, things like our brains just pick a pattern even if it doesn't make sense. Mm-hmm. So when I'm sequencing drums, I try to use the most mathematically efficient way of doing it. So if I'm doing a kick and I know it just needs to be there, like I'm doing 1 bar. Like I am setting that on 1 bar, and I don't care that like it doesn't hurt that I had to press the button 4 times instead of once. You know, actually that's another thing. I ordered and received the Constellation, which is basically algorithmic, you know, drum sequencing, and I look forward to getting that in the case to see, because I mean, like as far as percussion goes, I also learned a long time ago I can make some really boring drums, and like I look at it as kind of like hamburger helper, in this case percussion helper. So I'm looking forward to that, because actually the original reason I bought a second vector was to have one dedicated to drum voices, because while you can make, so it's got 8 channels, you can make one of those channels do 4 percussion voices. They get lumped into a single step. There are 4 bars, so you can mix, you know, whether or not there is a trigger, and then there's a velocity setting. But a lot of the chance operations, or the random stuff, or the mathematical, like you said, do it once every 4, once every 8, every, you know, even or odd.
Yeah.
That only happens on the step, so not the individual 4 drum voices.
Right.
And that was stifling to me. But now that I have the Constellation, I'm actually considering pulling that second vector out and making more room for other modulation.
That's cool. Yeah. Everything is drums. I just wanted to say that. Like I think about everything like drums, which is why half the time my bass line's like C 8 times in a row, like a high note at the end or something, right? Like it's not rocket science. It's not like anything anyone would hear on their own and be like, that's a brilliant sequence. Like I don't care. But the reason I say that is because like in the context of random, there are some things that just like physically kind of hurt when they're randomized.
Oh, so, yeah.
Like I do not subscribe to random on like the bones of the song. So like if that's the kick, or like a key bass line, like, yeah, randomize maybe some of the sounds of it, like how long the tail is, or like if you've got some modulation options, cool. But like that note needs to be there for me to feel good. Hats, if they're 16th notes, yeah, randomize the shit out of that. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter, right? Like it's gonna be cool. Like it's fine. Add a little bit of shuffle or whatever, you know. Like that stuff I think is great to randomize. Or any of the ear candy arpeggios. I know random arpeggios aren't technically an arpeggio, but I think when you've got a chord and you put it on random, it's glorious. Like it's fine.
Fun story about the random part is in band when I graduated high school. We have to play the graduation music. They're like da 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 da. I can't remember what it's called.
Yeah.
Our band director he was a great guy, and so what he would do is, as he was conducting, we knew that if he flipped his baton straight up,
Yeah.
that it meant we were going to randomly add an extra beat. And we would do this, and you would watch the line trip, not fall, like not damaging anybody, but you would actually, like, because everybody's expecting it to be back and forth as they're walking in time to the procession, you throw an extra beat in there, and half the line like doesn't react to it. The other half of the line is like, well, wait, what? So yeah.
Yeah, I would be the half that trips.
Yeah.
That's why I like have a love-hate relationship with random, because I think my first experiences with random, I was like, nope, do not like this. I need.
Well, and I mean, to that point also, for me, random, especially for hi-hats, I use it more not to add, but to take away.
Right, exactly. Like, it's okay if something like that is missing. And it is nice to take away things intentionally. So like every once in a while, like if you do have 4 to the floor, like, and you get to a specific sequence, and you want to do a night, like a sort of jarring transition, like pull that 4th kick, like you'll feel it. Like there'll be like a ghost kick there, that kind of thing. I don't know. Anyway, it's fun to build. I mean, I've been enjoying building my own band. I I like playing with the parameters more than I like the actual sequencing, but the sequencing is pretty fun too.
Well, and you got to have a sequence to really start to enjoy those things.
But I do think of most things, like when I'm purchasing a module or looking at modules, if it's something, like I don't mind reading a deep manual on my primary sequencer, fine. But for modules where I'm like, I've got to be in there quick and find something and move something around or flip a switch or whatever thing is, like I'm always thinking about like how performable is this? Is this something that's set and forget? Like, I don't know. Like there's some modules that are okay to be set and forget. Like the Rample is pretty set and forget. Like you pick a set and like you can trigger the drums and do whatever. And yeah, you can do some modulation over it. Like I have typically the door stopper set up to like mangle the sound pretty good. But like I don't need to get into menus that often there.
Yeah, which is nice. And that's another thing that as I've expanded, like I have less patience and tolerance for it. Like the FX8 is a great example of, man, what a lot of capability shoved into 6 HP. And it can sound okay. I will admit, like as somebody who's a bit of a reverb snob, and that doesn't mean I don't like lo-fi reverb. I like lo-fi reverb, but there's some times where you go from lo-fi reverb to metal resonator.
Yeah.
So like I don't gel with it that much to begin with, but like after, I remember I spent an afternoon. I spent like 2 hours going through all the algorithms, picking 32 that I really liked, and then realizing there was no way I was ever going to remember what the hell was loaded anywhere. And so
Yeah.
Like simplicity, despite the fact that I intentionally make everything in my life overcomplicated, modular is an area where I continue like dividing to simplicity.
I want to talk about reverb in a second. I know we're going over time. We can cut it anytime, by the way. But I'm like into this one. The FX8 I looked at when I was starting this build, because I thought it might be a good place to sort of get a feel for what effects I like. And then I took a step back and I was like, well, I already have a delay in this. All right, I've already played with reverb because I've got the big sky pedal down there. I've played with multiple distortions in modular. Like I have the rat. I built the rat module myself here,
Yeah.
and the big muff and some other distortions. And I was like, well, those are like kind of the big three that I would have played with. So instead of getting the FX8, I was like, well, I would like a dedicated reverb for modular. The bat sounds good to me. It's a little
Yeah.
bit dirty. It's a little bit can sound pretty cool. Not super picky. Um, and that's it. Like, I mean, I do have some distortion. Like the Trash Master is distortion with the caveat that it's really sort of a high pass filter mixed with a distortion. They play really nicely together. Distortion and synths, like, there's a lot of caveats to make that sound good. Data
Yep.
and I were messing with that the other day, but reverb is something that I hardly touch. Hardly ever. Like, it's very rare, and when I do, it's usually on the MS-10 and nothing else. And I've found that typically, while I appreciate really nice reverbs, they sound the best on long notes. Like, it's sort of like the Oberheim demos we heard today aren't really reverb specific, but it's one of those instruments that, like, when they're doing the demos, almost all of the notes are long held notes, so you can hear the full range of reverb and PWM or whatever the heck they've got going. And I find the same with reverb, where I find it shines. The more Spartan
Yeah.
the sounds are. Like, if I put a lot of reverb in, like some of my typical mixes where I've got drums and other voices, like, it just instant mud.
Yep.
That, which is why I hardly touch it. It's not that I don't like reverb, but I did want a good reverb so I can play with it, because there were some things I was playing with the other day where, like, I think it was I want to say, like, the Trash Master and the MA35 filter. I had them both going, like, the same voice going into them. I had them both going into the bat reverb, and, like, at just the right setting, it was like a male choir picking up. It was so bizarre, but it was so cool. So, like, I'm glad I have it, but it'll be. I'll try to keep it Spartan, except for when I want to fuck shit up, you know.
So, I mean, pro tips on reverb. First of all, granted, everybody's to taste, but generally do everything you can to keep your bass frequencies out of there. I mean, honestly, maybe even up it to 400 or 500 hertz. I prefer band limited reverb in the sense that I want it to fill a particular audible space, and so you get into like super hi-fi reverbs, and this is the reason why I've been buying these older ones, because, like, just by the nature, like, they weren't hi-fi. There's a difference between I want ambience and I want to recreate what it sounded like in Red Rocks.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
So for me, I like the grittier, non-perfect types of things. I like to be able to shape again, the bandwidth, like the filtering of making sure all the lows are out, not letting it get super crystal high in the top. But for me, the big thing is, and actually you said that you had the Big Sky. Yeah. So, man, that's a reverb I can't get behind. And I heard this said, and the first time I heard it said, I didn't believe it. And the reason I can't get behind the Big Sky, and to some extent, I've got the Night Sky, and I have it's right there, the Star Lab.
Oh, Star Lab. Okay.
They're both up there. That's my mostly my effects case. The source sound always to me sounded like it was riding along with the reverb in the Big Sky. They didn't sound like they were actually, like, paired up. And I mean, I tried for a year, and so, like, I want to call out the Desmodus Versio, because if somebody came to me and they said, hey, I want reverb in the case, I'm going to recommend that one first of all, because there's a lot of modulation options. It has the filtering. It is a unique reverb. Like, I love the distortion mode that's on it.
Yeah.
And again, you can get some really awesome with the fuck shit up options. Yeah. It is, and it's not trying to be another reverb. Signal balance as well with it. Like, it is its own thing. And that would be the one I'd say number one. Number two is actually probably, other than it doesn't like hot signals, the ALM, what is it? the MFX.
Okay.
That's been another one that I'm pleased with. But again, it's based on a lot of these like classic 70s and 80s grainy. Like one of its hallmark modes is based on the Elisa's Quadriverb, which you can pick up for $50 all day long. But again, when you really look at mixes and performance, like when you're sitting on your own and you, like you said, you launch that long note into a reverb on its own, like you want to really sit there, you want to steep in it like you're getting a schwitz, right? Like you just want reverb coming out of your pores.
Yeah.
But when you're performing, you need this much.
Yeah, like, exactly.
Unless you're like doing the whole like ambient drone thing, you need this much.
I mean, we can illustrate that really easily. Like one of the things I really like to do, it's the shittiest reverb. It's like absolute garbage if you're comparing it to any of the things we just mentioned. But I've got reverb built into my mixer, and it's like adequate, right? But one of the things I like to do, like, is build up that wall of sound sometimes, where I'll select a few instruments, crank up the reverb, let that get like, it almost sounds like an audience, like at a stadium or something. You get that like wash of sound, right? Build it up and then cut it, like hard cut into like a super clean bass and kick. Like, so good. And you should do that shock value. You'll have fun with it.
That's another great example. The other thing that I really like to use it for is, and I discovered this by accident. When I say this, most people are gonna be like, "Well, duh." The weekend that I first got the Desmodus, I was just firing a high pitched sine wave into it, and realizing at the end that because the decay was so slow, that all of a sudden you're building, like you said, these walls of chords.
Yeah.
And like, so for things like that, going back to the random, I'll take the 8 steps, I'll set it down to 5, like, and I'll program in there's a scale called the Amara scale, which I actually got from a handpan drum. I forget, like it has a real name. Well, I mean, like it's an actual mode with
right.
It only has like 5 or 6 degrees in the scale instead of 8. But so like I'll just go in and I'll throw those notes on there, and I will give it a little bit of randomness about where's it going to jump to. And no matter what 2 notes it plays, it always sounds great. But then hearing in a long tail reverb how those notes start to form like chords that you wouldn't have expected, and then as time goes on and notes get switched out, I think that's a lot of fun to play around with too. I'm gonna say overall for the average person, I think effects in the rack are a little hard to justify.
I would agree. I would agree. And of the effects I've used, the only one I would even recommend, like don't touch reverb, don't touch distortion, maybe a delay.
Yeah, that if you had to have one.
Yeah.
And honestly,
you can get reverb like effects with the delay.
So one of the things on my SoundCloud is I did this like techno-y like 7-beat loop for 20 minutes that it was using this is actually one of those rare modules that I just didn't click with. It was the Pittsburgh Cascading Delay Network. So it's 4 of their delay, like the PT239 delays, and then there's a lot of different routing options. So I was using it to kind of create a 4 delay line reverb behind the main line. And the other thing that's cool about it is if you have one of those modules and you haven't touched it in a while, the calibration pots on the back, like, I don't know why, it's the expansion of the module gets hot. You'll hear these little zippers like it's adjusting the delay time because the value of the resistance of that trimmer is changing. And so, like using it, like it was fairly effective. It was a little muddy, but it was fairly effective. I wish I could figure out a way to play audio from my computer. I
mean, we don't have to. I have the triple splashback right here. That delay I was just talking about up here for the piano line. So let me hit play on that again. Let me just make sure the right sequence is set.
And to be clear, that's 3 delay lines?
It's 3. It's 3 PT 2339s.
Nice.
And you can adjust the time, like they go into each other basically, right? I can
That's
go
the clock
even
noise.
further. Yeah, it is. Well, it's not clock noise. It's that the delay is going further than it's designed for.
Oh.
So if I keep going, we're gonna get really noisy here. Hopefully, it's not too bad. I'm just warning you.
No, it's pretty awesome.
Hold on, I'm just adjusting a little bit.
There you go.
Right, if you get it just at the right, like you add a little bit of resonance, that PT2339 will get a lot of signal and repeat. And you'll get these like really cool. I mean, I think it's a great delay. It's lo-fi, sure,
Yep.
but it does the job anyway.
Well, and that's coming out in the Eurorack format, right?
Yeah, so the next two modules that have been talked about publicly are the GUR filter, which I don't have in my case right now. It will be in that case, and the PT and the triple splashbacks. That will be Eurorack. It is a bigger module, but it's a really fun one to play with. Particularly, there's that master time control for all three delays at once, and that's CVable. There's typically on every Look Mom computer module attenuators for every input, so you can really have a lot of fun with it. Let me see. Yeah,
fun story you might not know about the PT2 or 20. Was it 2399?
2339 or 2399? I can never remember.
There's a 2, a 3, and a 9. They all go in there. So if I say the company Belton, do you know who Belton is? So Belton is one of the older spring reverb tank manufacturers, and boy, you want to talk about a guy that is in a spring reverb. You're looking at him. I have so many tanks and so many different drivers and a couple of rack units. I don't know why. I just love spring reverb. Anyway, Belton started manufacturing a digital spring tank, and what it is it's all those PT chips in one epoxy potted brick. And actually, funny thing is, the guy that figured this out is a well-known name that I think most of us would know if I could remember his name, but he kind of designed the circuit. And so there's a ton of artificial spring reverb pedals out there based on the Belton brick, but again, it's just all PT delays, thrown together.
Because it has that metallic. You saw when I cranked up I guess lowered the time it takes for the reverb to happen. It gets super metallic like instantly. So I imagine a brick of those, instant spring reverb. I don't know if it's coming out for Eurorack, but there is a Look Mom No Computer spring reverb module.
Yeah, he mentioned that
in the works that I'm very excited about because I'm gonna be able to whack that box.
To that point, actually, the Belton brick is IntelliGel makes a 1U like called the Digiverb, and it's based on the Belton brick.
Cool.
But I think they have it set up as I really like the stereo application of spring reverb because there's no chance in hell that you're ever going to get the same sound out of both springs. Like you want to talk about non-linear wide reverb, that's the way to do it. Of course, on the other hand, I started playing around with mid-side processing late last year with the Duranalog Enhance. And doing the mid-side like with spring reverb is amazing. But I also realized most of the music we listen to isn't actually that wide.
Yeah.
I mean, it's literally like canyon. Like you're standing in the middle of the Grand Canyon and you're looking 180 degrees in both directions. Well, you know what I mean? 180 degrees total. It's a little too wide.
And that's accentuated with these headphones because they have a really wide field being opened back the way they are.
So like that's another frustrating thing, right? The sound design. I remember DivKid Ben. He did an interview with somebody. It might have been Mylar Melodies, where one of the questions was, "How much time do you spend composing versus sound design?" And he talked about his process. Like I sound design like Mondays is sound design day and leg day. But that's the thing too, is when you find like these tricks and you're like super into that sound and you realize that it's actually almost useless or impossible to work around in a musical context because it just takes up too much bandwidth or, things like that. Like that's always frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's I'm of two minds, right? I like trying to problem solve and make something musical that may not necessarily be musical. So like that fuck shit up button, right off the bat, I was like, I don't know what this is for. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized like you can use it for all sorts of things. Like you hold that button and crank that filter, all of a sudden you have a really nice, big, wide filter sweep happening stereo. Like that kind of stuff I really like. But one of the things that I think about more than anything else is like how repeatable can it be? Like I don't care if it sounds exactly the same as long as I'm in the neighborhood if I want to play that song again live or something. So like this case, like it's pretty close to done in my opinion. Like I can't imagine very many modules will be swapped out of there. Like it's about what it is. Outside of the Eurorack section, that's a little more flexible because most of them are unrelated. But like that's how it is. And I spent a lot of time sound designing up front. So like not intentionally, just like getting familiar with modules, playing
Yeah.
around. Like a lot of those sound design days culminate to a point where like now I know what that's capable of. I know what I can do, and I can do it quickly, just about anything. I might have to repatch stuff, and it might take me 30 minutes, but like that's nothing in terms of like actually plugging shit in and getting everything set up.
Yeah.
Versus like when I got this, new oscillators, new filters, new ADSRs, even like I assumed wrongly that I would be able to take what I learned over here and apply it over here. And yeah, some tricks and things I can, but it's learning a whole new instrument. Like it's a whole new machine. So I'm spending a lot of time sound design on that side of things. And I can do it in pieces. I'm in a luxurious spot where I can like, do I need to use drums real quickly? I've got the drum brute to back me up and I got this. Like there I can get what I want out of those while I play with like one voice on this thing. So like I'm sound design takes a long time and it just takes a lot of time getting familiar with it. So I think playing with things like I've done some tracks that I can never repeat again, which is like a modular thing, right? Like
Yeah.
and when I say I can never repeat it again, I mean like beyond what I'm not trying to even talk about the same exact like wiring. Like I could do that again, sure, but like using the bit ranger in combination with other things. Like this thing is like an unpredictable little beast. Like I will set up something that is like a one-time performance, and those are the most fun sound design sessions where you're not really worried about repeatability, and that's where I learn the most. And then I can take what I've learned there. Okay, I can make that musical doing X, Y, and
Yep.
Z, that kind of stuff. So I think they're valuable to do it. I think folks like DivKid have to do it more than others because they're constantly swapping out modules.
Yep.
I think a good thing to do is actually what Stu J is doing and like go
Not
like a
buying
year.
anything.
Yeah, but like a year, right? Like last year, I hardly built anything, and that was somewhat intentional. I was pretty happy where I was. And I just wanted to get really familiar with my setup and practice for performances and all sorts of fun stuff. This year, it's like new Cosmo Town and new Eurorack Town. Next year, I'll probably like settle down for a bit. Actually, like after I get like some of these extra modules that are coming in the mail, I probably won't buy much more
Yeah.
for a while because there's a lot to learn there.
Well, and that's, I'm getting ready to do iteration 4 of my cases. And same thing. Like when I filled the cases up, I was like, okay, that's it. And then as time went on, I was like, this module isn't for me, or oh, there's a better option, etc. And so, we're in buying season now. By the time early summer gets here, it'll be revamp everything. Although I will tell you, especially when you have several cases to manage, right? Everybody's like, how do you do it?
Yeah,
How do you do it? And I will
yeah,
tell you, for me, because I tried to do the like, oh, my oscillators and filters are here, so they're quick to patch. At the end, I had to capitulate to put brands together and
interesting.
follow a design language of, for brands, it's going to be going from inside out. It's going to be filters, then oscillators, because to your point about design language, I can look up far more quickly and say, oh, there's my mutable row, there's my IntelliGel row. And I know that the left side of that, in that case, is going to be where the filters are. And I know the oscillators are going to be on the outside. But anyway, like just going through that practice, and then like you said, like getting to know what you're making out, and then this is where the FOMO kicks back in though, because then you're like, oh, I gotta get that module, and it's like I admittedly I've got modules in here that I haven't learned, and shame on me, right? But it's I like finding an approach and then sticking with it, and like I said, doing it by manufacturer has worked pretty well, except in the control case that actually is organized a little bit. Like gate modules are next to one another,
A
envelope
little more,
generators.
yeah.
I got a question for you. If I send you a link, can you play audio?
I can.
Can I send you a link to
Yeah.
play one of my pieces?
Yeah, there's a private chat
I see
below.
that.
That
Look at
should
this, all
probably
the
work.
capabilities we've got. The future is now, kids. So while you're pulling this up, so this is a demo I made the first day that I had the Desmodus that I really took advantage of the fuck shit up. So at the time I had a Chaos Odessa, and so it was just the oscillator that was close by. So it's just the sine wave. Um, Sequencing is just a kick and a hi-hat. The kick is run through a chronoblob, and then I put a filter in the middle of that so that the kick had some texture to it. Um, this little sample is really meant to carry the reverb as the primary thing. In the sequence, this is where again I put in that D Amara scale, put in some blanks, and just have the sequencer randomly picking octave, randomly going from note to note, sometimes skipping notes, etc. And yeah, I'll stop talking.
Well, I think we can keep talking over it, which is what I'm trying to volume down just a little bit. Let's see. This is the right.
So that coming in is fuck shit up starts open, like because it had the notes from while I was playing it. So we start with that building up.
Yeah. I think it's interesting. You're the first person I've talked to that organizes by brand, and that's kind of a cool concept, and I dig it. I tend to do it more by like mono synth, if that makes sense, or by machine. So like a little mono synth section here, a little mono synth section here. Maybe that's going to be my bass, drum section, controller, whatever. Like that's kind of how I think.
So where I ultimately netted out, because I was worried about that, right? Like trying to keep stuff close together. And I realized at the end of the day, just buy longer patch cables. And granted, like between on this, so this is a custom desk I built. It holds two Pittsburgh 420 or Structure 420s and one Structure 270. I need like 8-foot patch cables to get from one side to the other.
I'm with you, and there's just not good, like, I mean, the best ones I found were the Bafaka ones, because they're super duper long, because I needed to go from, like, there across the room, right? Like, I don't know.
So one thing I'll point out about this real quick, I'll stop talking. If you listen to this on your own, those sine waves going into there, what I found really bizarre is sine waves will distort in the Desmodus, like in the bat verb. Like if you listen to this like on your own on like high quality headphones, like you'll hear distortion in the sine waves that's not necessarily pleasant. And I reached out to them about it, and they're like, yeah, sine waves distort in this reverb. So and that was without like the distorted reverb turned on, right?
Huh.
So like that's just a thing. Again, it adds texture and character. But again, this piece was all about like highlighting that reverb and the fuck shit up being kind of like one of the cool signature features, because here we go. That chord you're hearing just happens to be whatever the last 4 notes played, which was completely random.
Right, while you're just pushing a button.
No, actually, this was a gate. So when
you gated it. Yeah.
So that was what was cool is I had played those notes to prime it. I was inverting the run trigger. So when it wasn't running, it was holding FSU high, and when the sequence is over and I hit stop,
that's super clever.
Yeah. And that again, that's why I like Logic modules. As far as, and if you want a good and affordable way to get into Logic modules and get a lot of options, I highly recommend the Clavis Logic XT, because it has like 50 different modes that are, I mean, they're all on the front panel. Like you have to press one shift button but all the labels are there. Each mode has up to 4 inputs, and like The thing I use the most on it actually is the inverter. But like starting to play around with it, using gates for things other than triggering an envelope or triggering a drum voice was one of my biggest learning things last year.
Yeah, I've gotten really clever, like in particular when I'm trying to do patches that don't involve like digital sequencers, like when I'm using that thing up there, I'll use a lot of gates to like flip directions or like stall it or things like that are just clever. They just make me feel good.
Yeah,
Like that's so clever.
because you're like, I'm the only person in the world that's ever figured this out.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't. All right, the last thing I want to say before we wrap up, because it's like we're like at 2 hours almost.
I'm sorry, I have that effect on people. Wow, it really is. It's midnight here.
Buffered mults with LEDs are the best because they're 1 pixel oscilloscopes. Anyway, I was looking at buffered mults for your rack that have additional capabilities, so whether they're attenuverters or whatever. The ones that didn't have LEDs were immediately ruled out because I used that so much to see what a signal is. Anyway, have a good evening, everybody. Like, this was super cool. You got to come back again, Radiator, because we have a lot to talk about.
Yeah, no, this was fun, and I'll be hitting you up in the coming months because I'll stream for the first time on EMS.
Yes, I mean, I think you can do that. Like, this is like the angle you've even got now would be more than adequate.
Yeah, I have a second case cam over there. So
yeah, just do it. Like, this is, I mean, that sounded great. Like, just make some streams happen. Walk us through, like, you don't even have to stream anything. You could stream 0 audio and be like, look at how I patched this clever thing here. Like, this 8-foot cable by blah 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 does it. Like, we don't even care. We're like, we'd be happy to watch that.
Well, and just if anybody's curious, Black Market Cables is my preferred brand. But yeah, man, heck, thank you very much to invite me on. This was a blast. So I look forward to doing it again.
I'm glad you came on. It was cool. We went too far.
Actually, hold on. I want to ask one quick question. Is whoever, let's see, it was Shock Value made the heresy comment. What was that about?
If I recall right, that was me saying I don't use reverbs hardly at all.
Gotcha.
Which is true. I've been trying to use it more because it's a new module. The bat module is new to me. I'm trying to use it more just to get familiar with it, but I'm definitely at the point where I'm using it aggressively, just to better understand it, not necessarily how I plan to use it all the time.
Well, I actually can't wait to hear what you do when you start exploring the other modes that you can, or the other firmwares you can upload to it.
Yeah, I'm going to be looking at that probably next month sometime. This month is like kind of shot because all of my free time, I'm taking a wilderness first responder course, and all of my free time is going to that. So after this, I'm going to be reading books and listening to data, it looks like. So cool.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, everybody, and thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you on the Discord.
I'm going to attempt to play us out because I didn't realize I actually had I've only had the overseer for like 10 minutes and I already messed up by leaving it like low pass for the intro.
No, but dude, it was awesome.
Yeah, it sounded fine, but I was like, oh, cool.
It sounded better than fine.
Yeah. All right. I'm just gonna, you know what? I'm gonna switch camera angles. There we go. That one's slightly okay. Here, let's fix that. There we go. All right. Make some music. Oh, I gotta load up the patch. Thank you, HeyPax, for being fast. All right, let's start with, I really liked this sequence, and that, and that. Start with that, and make things real mellow, real quick.
And I'm going to drop so you can have the center stage, man.
Okay, have a good one. Thanks for coming on. Actually, I don't even know if this is on. It is on? Yeah, I'll mute myself. so it's not heavy breathing in a sense.
But now we're not going to have options. 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 So I'm really curious to see see a full-size clone, see a full-size like jack plug, it's going to be, I don't know, what would it be? It's gonna be, I don't know, what would it be called? What would it be called? What would it be called?
I think we're gonna see maybe exactly like full size, maybe probably black panel, probably black panel. Probably black panel.
Which was like when I first got them.
So fun. They're so very fun.